came to life for students at Lux Middle School.
Here's tonight's Excellence in Education report. 8th grade students reenacted American history this week and using props and dressing up. President Franklin Roosevelt and General Patton were part of the famous figures in attendance. Students had to give a speech and make a poster highlighting the historical events in that person's life.
I chose the wheelchair because he was paralyzed, and that really tells the story of his struggles and how he was able to become president and still be paralyzed like this.
Now, earlier tonight, there was an open house where people in the community came and saw these people of prominence.
This broadcast brings this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. It is so hard to believe that this world has confined itself to the chains of yet another world war. Now I, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, am caught in the middle of it. In reality, all the struggles began at the end of the Great War, when I had the privilege to be the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. I was in the prime of my life, and yet another step closer to the White House. After the war, things were sensational. Interest rates were low, business was booming, and life was pleasing. To make everything even better, I was nominated by the Democratic Party to run for Vice President. Though the results did not turn out in my favor, I was able to get myself known on the national scale. Unfortunately, in 1921, my life would be altered forever. For many weeks, I became ill and was treated for a cold, but my wife thought it was much worse. She was right. The final diagnosis was polio, and because of the massage therapy they prescribed me, I was left permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Now the only way I can get around is in my wheelchair or with my cane and leg braces. I believe that God put me in this chair to prepare me for hard times like these. God was testing me, but this would be a test that I would not fail. While I was in therapy, my admirable spouse Eleanor kept my political career intact. It is because of her I am where I am today. In 1928, I returned to the political stage as governor of New York. Unfortunately, the glory days of the 20s had come to a conclusion. By the end of the decade, America and the rest of the world had fallen into the greatest depression in history. From the ashes of the Depression, I arose as president and promised myself to a new deal for the American people. Back during the 30s, I had the weight of 13 million unemployed Americans and the rising fear of the nation's banks. To start, I closed all the banks until reform legislation could be passed. To restore public confidence, I reached out to our humble nation on the radio through my fireside chats. Finally, to deal with unemployment, I would set up countless programs to create jobs, improve agriculture, and provide the much-needed economic relief. When it came time for re-election, I won by the largest landslide in U.S. history. The next problem I faced was in Europe and the Pacific. Another war had erupted, but I swore to keep this nation neutral. Unfortunately, the peace was broken today as the Japanese have forced upon us a war. Now, as I prepare to go before Congress and engage in a war in the Valley of Death, I remember that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.